Mark Ludwig. He is the founder of Americans with Equal Shared Parenting. He has extensive political experience on a national level and has toured the country promoting the importance of shared parenting for kids. He's also a devoted father to his son Levi. I'd like you to welcome Mark Ludwig. Thank you.
First, I do want to thank David and Ben and Michael and anybody else who put this on. It's been a great event, the part that I've taught so far. Very highly impressed with the speakers and appreciate everybody taking the time to come out today. I'm going to share just a few ideas on the Title IV connection. I got involved in these ideas just like everybody else. All of a sudden, you're hit with a situation where you get limited exposure to your child. I had quite a bit of political experience in the past. I've been a candidate for U.S. Congress. I served on the Small Business Policy Council for the state of Missouri, so I was the liaison between the governor's office, the state legislature, and the Missouri Chamber of Commerce for years. In 30 years, I've worked on hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of legislation and thousands of legislators that I've worked with. And years ago, one of my mentors told me, if you're having a problem, get a piece of legislation passed, and you're just constantly having, and there's just no logical reason, there's a money reason behind it. And you need to follow the money trail to where's the money coming from. So I had started working on these ideas, I guess it was about 2.5, 3 years ago in Missouri. Started expanding into a couple other states and noticed the same thing, that okay, we're having a problem here. And so I started doing some research that some of you may have already known about years before me, but it was new to me at the time, about the Title IV money. And the whole reason is anytime the government gets involved in something, you're going to have some problems. And I give the analogy, it's like third-party transactions. And you've got several types of transactions you could have. You have a first-party transaction. That's where you're buying something with your money for something that you're going to use. So you're interested in two concerns at that point. The budget that you have, the cost, and the quality. You're interested in the quality because you're the one who's going to use it. You're interested in the cost because you don't want to spend too much money. Now translate that to a second-party transaction where you're using someone else's money to buy something that you're going to use. Anybody ever go out to dinner with your boss? and you're used to reading from right to left, and then you go out with your boss and you look for the most expensive thing because you want to get a good meal that day. So you're very interested in quality because you're going to eat the meal, but you're not really concerned about the cost. Your boss is paying for it. Then you move into a third-party transaction. This is where somebody else's money is paying for something that somebody else is going to use. That is exactly what happens with especially family law, but just about any government transaction. We have people in the family law arena that are making decisions based on the quality of time with kids that aren't their kids, and the child support issues that aren't their budget. And so they really don't have as much concern about the end results. It's a shame, but you would hope that there was a way that judges could follow up 5, 10, 15 years and see the results of the orders that they gave and how it affected the families down the road. But the situation that we're all faced with is basically it's the ultimate third-party transaction. And it was created by this Title IV funding formula. And I don't want to go through all the details because I know we've got a lot of other speakers. So I'm going to try and give you the summary version. But it was created back, it originally started in the 60s, expanded into the 70s. The reason it was created was back in the Beaver Cleaver days when I was growing up, my dad was a chemical engineer, my mom was a stay-at-home mom, our neighbor was a stay-at-home mom, the next neighbor was a stay-at-home mom. Matter of fact, on our entire street of Marvale Lane in St. Louis, there was not a single woman who worked on that street. They were all stay-at-home moms. Go to Marvale Lane today, you're not going to see a single woman home during the day because they're all working now at this point. But back in the 70s, in the 60s and 70s, when the Title IV funding formula all started, the challenge is if you had a married couple where a woman was the primary nurturer for the child and had been out of the workforce for 12 years taking care of the kids, and then the couple gets a divorce, it's very hard for a woman, especially in the 60s and 70s, to go out and make a substantial income if they've been out of the workforce for 12 years to make an income substantial enough to support the child. So as a result, they were dependent on child support. And if someone was not paying child support, that person was probably going to end up on welfare. So they created a system that said if someone's not paying child support and this person's on welfare, we need a way to recoup that to try and go after the, they call them the deadbeat dads, but it's the ones who literally were intentionally not paying child support and as a result, we're causing federal funds to be misused. So that was what it was set up for. It was a means-tested program, that the only people a part of this program were the people that had fallen below the poverty line. If you were above the poverty line, your court order was not in any way issued or affected by the Title 40 funding formula. It was only affecting the people at a means-tested who fell below the poverty line. That worked very well until 1997, when everything changed. They had what they call mission creep, and this is very, very common with federal programs. They start out with a very good intent, and then they get into mission creep. And in 1997, it got expanded to where they now included all child support orders into the Title 40 funding formula, which meant now it's no longer a means tested below the poverty line. 19 million orders all got thrown into this pot. Now, the Title 40 funding formula, there's two main aspects to it. There's actually several aspects, but the two main ones that affect all of us, there's two parts to it. One is a reimbursement part. And that says that the states are going to be reimbursed 66 cents on the dollar for every dollar they spend on child support enforcement. And it's critical that you understand how that is defined. Some people, you'll see stuff on the internet, especially on Facebook, people saying, hey, for every dollar they collect, they're receiving $12 from the federal government. That is not true. It's for every dollar they spend on enforcement that they're going to be receiving funds. So they're receiving funds because the theory is if you're having to hire someone and pay a salary for someone to chase down someone who's not paying child support, the federal government is going to reimburse you 66 cents on the dollar for that person's salary and for their efforts. Now I want you to imagine this. Imagine you own a restaurant and you've allocated enough money to hire 3 people at your restaurant. For rough numbers, let's just say $10,000 a year salary. That you've got $30,000 in your budget to hire employees for your restaurant. And you get ready to hire 3 employees, get ready to pay your $30,000, and all of a sudden you realize you have a rich uncle who comes along and says, you know what, I'm going to help you get your start. So I'll tell you what, for every 3 employees you hire, I'm going to pay for 2 of them. Would you stop at 3 employees if you had already budgeted $30,000? How many people would admit you would hire more employees? Why? Because you get better service for your restaurant the more employees you can hire, and especially if somebody else is paying for 2/3 of them, you had already planned on hiring 3 anyway. That's what happens to most state budgets. Most state budgets, if they get federal funding, their attitude is, we're only going to pay for 1 out of 3 of these anyways. Let's start hiring more people for that department. Once these people get hired, they have to justify their salary in order to be able to keep that position. How do they justify their salary? The more child support they can collect, that's how they're going to justify their salary. But it got compounded by the second part of this formula, which is where the major problem comes from. It's an incentive pool. I'm not going to go all through the details. Did we ever figure out how to get that set up or not? Is it showing up for you guys on the screen?
No.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to go into all of it, but there's an incentive pool based on 5 determining factors for how the states are going to collect a pot of money that's about $5.5 billion that the states compete for to get these incentives. And they're based on percentage of paternity establishments, child support establishments, current support, arrearages collected, and then the cost effectiveness of the program. But it's weighted in such a way that the higher dollars you can collect, the more money that you're going to get in that incentive program. So it's not a true dollar-for-dollar match, but it does figure into the formula. And so the real problem stems from the fact that, as I said, these people have to justify their salary. So I want you to imagine this. You're a child support enforcement officer, and you get 2 files on your desk. One file is for somebody who would have been a means-tested type person. The challenge is that child support order is probably only $50 or $100 a month. That person's probably changed jobs 8 times in the last 3 years. They've probably changed the residence 8 times in the last 3 years. And so you're going to have a hard time tracking them down. They may not have any money once you do track them down. But you got this other file sitting on your desk. This is a middle-class parent. Their child support is $700 a month. They've worked at the same place for the last 3 years. All you have to do is threaten to take their driver's license away, garnish their wages, and boom, you just got the equivalent of 7 of these jobs for 1 job over here. Which one are you going to go after? And so ironically, the very people that the program was set up to go after aren't even being touched. Child support enforcement officers aren't even going after them at all. It's too much work for their return on investment, because to justify their position, they're being judged on their boss based on how they're qualifying based on these 5 determining factors. So they're not going after those people. They're going after the 700. But take it a step farther, because once again, that money bypasses the general state budget, and it goes directly to the Department of Social Services and the county enforcement workers. So these people are directly getting the incentive money. So two things they're doing is, number one, they're going after the larger orders, but the other thing that is the problem that all of us face is, how can you get larger orders coming in? Because in order to qualify for the incentive pool, your dollar amount collected has to be larger than the previous year, or you don't get anything in the incentive pool. So the orders for the state has to be larger next year than it is this year, or you just lost everything in that pool. Or the last thing a state wants to do is have to lay off a whole army full of workers that they've hired over the last 20 years in enforcement collection. So how's the best way to do that then? If you can influence the judicial system to give unequal orders. If you have a true 50-50 and the parents make about the same amount of income, there's probably not going to be much child support, unless there's a big disparity in income. However, if you can offset the parenting time, now you have a justification for why you need to have child support orders. And that's what's happening is right now, is if you've got the fox guarding the hen house. People who are involved in the process are influencing judges to try and get them to give offsetting orders so they can qualify for their incentive money, basically to justify their jobs. And so that's what's created the whole problem that we all face. We are making some of you may have even remembered, in Illinois this past year in Springfield, okay, we may have already gotten through most of it, but I was going to say, we got through most of it, but oh yeah, some of you, I don't know if you saw the Facebook Live of one of the attorneys in Illinois last year, in Springfield, Illinois, when we had our judicial committee hearing, that literally made the statement on camera. We couldn't believe, I mean, we've all known this, but it was just hysterical to see this live in person that day. I had driven all night. I'd been in Michigan the night before doing an event up in Lansing for Jim Runstead for his bill. And then we just heard that we were going to be the first one out of the chute that morning. So I drove all night long to get there. And it was worth the trip to see this. But this guy literally made the statement that said, if this bill passes, we stand to lose millions, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars of federal funds. And it was just, I mean, as you can imagine, we've all known that. But to hear the head of the Bar Association saying that on a recording was just hysterical. But it was not hysterical, it's really sad, to be honest. But that is the problem that we're all facing, is states are getting funding, and ironically for you guys in Texas, the #1 state that receives the largest amount by far of incentive pool money is the state of Texas. And you know, some of you have heard some of the Facebook Lives I've done, but I'm not exaggerating when I say I've traveled the country. This year I'm directly involved with 24 different states that I'm helping in one form or another on the rebuttal presumption bills. And I've dealt with a lot of leaders all across the country, and I'm not exaggerating, I'm not just saying it because these guys are here in the audience. I have never seen a leadership team that I would be more proud of to have representing us than the people that you guys have. Some of them in the room, I see Ben, I see Jeff, I see, this is the first time I've met you, I think. But I know Josh is here, Louise, and Mike, and like I said, I hate to mention names, David, but I'm not exaggerating, guys. I mean very sincerely from my heart. There is not, matter of fact, there's not even another 5 states combined that have the quality of leaders that you guys have here in Texas. So very, very proud of you guys. I think you guys definitely have a very, very good shot at getting this done. I've been traveling the Capitol, meeting with some of them. I'm friends with Brian Hughes and Matt Krause and James White. And so I've been, traveling the Capitol, so I've been in town, talking to different legislators, and the reception is there. I think the tide is definitely going in your favor at this point, and you guys have a great shot at it. We just need to educate more people, and for most people, that's all it is. It's an awareness issue. For myself, if you would have come to me 9 years ago and explained the situation, I would not have been able to relate to it. I give the analogy. It's when you think of the last time you bought a brand new car. The week after you bought that car, you couldn't believe how many people drive that same car on the road. And it's just because all of a sudden it got on your radar screen. You had never really recognized that make and model of car until you bought one, and now you recognize that everybody's driving one. That's what happens to all of us. Once we get thrown into the situation, now we realize how serious it is and how many people are affected. But I had no idea 9 years ago, and I can just tell you, I'm friends with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of legislators across the country, and I don't think majority of them have any intention of trying to get in between parents and kids. They just don't understand. So what we need to do is try and put ourselves in their shoes and educate them like you guys are doing here today with things like this, to try and meet them where they are and bring them around to help them understand the dynamics of the problem and how serious the problem is. But we are making progress all across the country. This year, we will have more legislation introduced in 2019 than any year we've ever had. We've got a lot of states that I think are darn close. The state of Missouri, my home state, I think most of you know, last year we would have gotten that bill passed if it wasn't for a governor that was in the middle of an impeachment process. And unfortunately, there was so much infighting in the Senate. We passed the House 137-7. This year, by the way, the only two big strong opponents that we had in the House are no longer in the House. So we have no strong opponents in the entire House of Representatives in Missouri this year. And we added two strong supporters, one of whom is my personal state rep, who went through a whole, and is still alienated from his adult child as a result of everything that we've been through. He's been through the silver bullet, he's been through parental alienation. So to have someone like him in the House makes it even stronger. But the Senate, we're very strong in too. So I believe Missouri's going to get passed. I believe South Dakota, you're going to see some neat things from there. There's a chance that may be passed by the second or third week of February already. And even though it's a small state, it'll set a precedent that'll help you guys out in Texas this year. So very excited. I don't want to take any time for questions because I think we were behind already when I got on. So I'm sort of here to serve you guys. So I'll sort of let it. I'd be willing to hang around. Like I said, I'll be here. All the flights got canceled into Missouri. We're expecting 15 inches of snow in St. Louis. So every flight into Missouri got canceled tonight. So I'm going to be spending the weekend here. So if anybody has questions, I'll just hang around and catch me one-on-one. But why don't we go ahead and move on to the program. But thanks again to Ben, to David, and to Michael, and Jeff, and anybody else who helped put this on.
Thank you.